welcome back to my channel. I'm Huck. Today we are doing my September wrap-up. In September, I read 4 books, which is a lot less than I was planning. I feel like I started out the month really strong. I felt really motivated and enthusiastic. I was like, I'm gonna read so many books. I was planning to read at least like 8 books this month. And then, I don't know what happened. Didn't do it. Part of that is just because I was reading like one really long book pretty much the entire month. It's not that I wasn't enjoying what I was reading. I really enjoyed most of pretty much everything that I read this month. But I just really slowed down. So who knows? But I read some books, so let's talk about them. The first book that I read is actually maybe more of a short story, but it is Galatea by Madeline Miller. I read this as an ebook, and this is a kind of a retelling of like after Pygmalion. So the myth of Pygmalion, where the sculptor brings to life, or prays to the gods to bring to life, a sculpture of the perfect woman that he has made. And they do so. And this is sort of like what happens after that, but we are learning about essentially just like the abuses that she has been subjected to over these years. It's a short story. It's like maybe 40 pages or something like that. And I think that overall, I liked this. I think it was well done. There are some things that, if the book had been longer, like there are some things where I have a lot of questions about what had happened in certain situations, or like why she did things in a certain way that she did. But it's a very brief snapshot of this like moment in her life. And I think that because it's so brief, it's not necessarily intended to like answer all of your questions, but more so to create like an emotional experience, which I think it was successful at. I think that it did a very good job of drawing you into her world and her emotional life. And, you know, even if like logistically I didn't understand all of her decisions, emotionally I understood all of her decisions. So I think that it did a very good job of that. I gave it 4 stars. After that, I read a nonfiction book called Beating Burnout at Work, and I don't remember the subtitle, but I will put the book on the screen. I also don't remember the name of the author. But this is a nonfiction book that I read for work, actually. I recently have started a book club at my job. So this is a very short book. It's only like 135 pages or something, but the way we've structured it is like we've split it into 3 sections, and so we're meeting every other week to discuss the section. And so in this, the first section of it really talks about just kind of a baseline of like, what is burnout and what do we know about it and that kind of thing. But then the rest of the book gets into the primed model, which is like an acronym for a model that she is using of essentially how to address burnout by creating team support. So instead of putting all the pressure to solve burnout on individuals, it's focusing on how teams are able to create a supportive environment and culture to prevent burnout. Anyways, I've actually really enjoyed this. I was a little like unsure about it at the beginning, but once we really got into the like the content of the model that she was talking about, I like a lot of the suggestions that she was giving, and I felt like this was a more usable, more applicable solution to a lot of issues of burnout than a lot of other ones that I have seen. So it just is a very interesting book that, you know, I don't think it was perfect necessarily, but I do think that it gave a lot of interesting information, and I liked the approach that she took of how can teams work together in order to, you know, counteract burnout. Anyways, I really enjoyed this overall. After that, the book that I was reading pretty much the entire month was Boudica, Dreaming the Eagle by Amanda Scott. Part of why this took me so long is because this is like a 700-page book. So it just like took a little longer. But this is historical fiction. I realize I didn't at all explain what this series is about, but this is about Boudica, who was a warrior queen among the Iron Age Celts who led her people in rebellion against the Roman invasion of Britain. This series is Amanda Scott's way of expanding upon not only who Boudica may have been as a character, what she may have been like, but also expanding upon the culture and especially spiritual life of Iron Age Celts. In this, we're following a couple of characters, but one of the main characters is Breca, who will become the Boudica. So the Boudica, in this, it's treating Boudica not as the name of a person, but as a title. So in this, we are following a character named Breca, who will eventually become the Boudica. And we're starting out with her fairly young, and she is a warrior of her clan. The other main perspective that we're following, because we get a couple of different perspectives, but Breca is one of the main ones, and then the other main perspective is Bon, who is her half-brother. And he wants to become a warrior of their clan, but he also has this very strong affinity for the dream world. So in their culture, they have a very strong spiritual connection to both the land and to this kind of dream world, dream magic, where they have like prophetic dreams. And everybody pretty much has some degree of connection to this like dream world, and will often have like one prophetic dream at some point. But there are people who are dreamers, who have this esteemed position in their community because they are the spiritual leaders. They are the ones who have dreams more frequently. Their prophetic dreams are more like accurate, and they are the ones who like interpret dreams. So they are kind of the spiritual leaders. They're also like spiritual healers of their community and like actual physical healers as well. So Bon has a connection or real affinity for this kind of dream spiritual magic that they have, but he really wants to be a warrior, not a dreamer. And so we're following them as they are growing up. We start out with them both being pretty young, and then we're following as they grow up and kind of come of age. The first half of this book feels very different from the second half, because in the first half, it's really about establishing the world, the landscape, the culture, the spiritual life of these people, the characters, all of that, which like is no surprise that was my favorite part of the book, where I'm like, not a lot of plot is happening, and we're just like really sitting here like getting to know the characters, the culture, the spirituality and magic and connection to the land. Like, these are all the things that I love. The second half of the book feels very different because they start to travel and we start to get more into the war elements of the story, which like knew was going to happen, but also I kind of didn't want it to happen because I was having a great time with them, just like, you know, chilling at their village and like going through their like coming of age rituals and all of that. But yeah, so in the second half, it expands the world. The stories also diverge because some of the characters start to go to different places and stuff. So I enjoyed the book overall, but I definitely liked the first half more than the second half. But overall, I really enjoyed this, and I really liked a lot of the characters. I loved the spirituality that she like expanded upon for their culture, because this is kind of Amanda Scott taking the little bit that we do know about Iron Age Celts and like their religion, and really trying to expand on it so that you can be like immersed in this world and their lives. And I just really enjoyed that about it. Anyway, I gave this 4 stars, and I'm planning to read the rest of the series, and I actually just filmed a review for this, so that'll be coming soon. Okay, and then the final book that I read this month was, oh, this is dusty. I don't know why that happened. Okay, the last book that I read was Fevered Star by Rebecca Roanhorse. So this is the second book in the Between Earth and Sky series. I think that's what the series is called. The first book is Black Sun. I read Black Sun earlier this year and loved it. So I was very excited to get to the second book. This one just came out earlier this year, and I've been hearing very like meh kind of reviews for it. People are really like, this is not as good as the first. So I wasn't quite sure what to expect going into this. And having read it now, I gotta say, I really enjoyed it. I do agree that it's not as good as the first one, but I still had a very good time reading this. I think that this very much feels like a second book or like a middle book. The first book had a real like energy to it or urgency to it because it was all going towards this one convergence. You know, there's this point in time that was like a prophesized moment of the eclipse with the solstice and like all of that, right? So it was following these characters as they're sort of converging at this point, so it had a real energy to it. This one doesn't have that same kind of energy. That event has happened. And so really what is happening in this is like this book is just kind of dealing with like the fallout of the first book and then setting things up, I'm assuming, for the next book. So it very much feels like a middle book and it doesn't have that same energy to it. There are also a couple of things, like a couple moments where I just was like, oh no. Because moments where it's like, and then their paths, like these two characters who were looking for each other almost found each other, but then there was a mistake, so they didn't find each other and their paths diverged. And I just was like, this is annoying. So I can see that, so that was like frustrating. Anyways, I can definitely see why people are saying it's not as good as the first one. I would agree with that, but I still had a really good time with it. I gave this 4 stars. I'm definitely going to be continuing on with the series whenever the next book comes out. But yeah, so generally enjoyed. Okay, so those are the 4 books that I read in September. Hopefully October I will get to read more. I'm going into October feeling really motivated. Hopefully that I can maintain that feeling instead of having it drop off like it did in September, but we shall see. Anyways, I would love to know if you have read any of these books, what your thoughts on them are, or what you did read in September. How's your reading going? But thank you all for watching, and until next time, bye.